features this week. We're going to talk about our attempts to get scammed on Amazon for 7900 XTX or XT for like $400. We're also talking about how the 7900 XTX and XT sales have been booming lately thanks to RTX 4090 bans in China. And additionally, we heard you like GPUs, so we're running the 4090 through a 4060 Ti so you can GPU while you GPU. Oh, and we'll also have a whole special section dedicated to our ever-dissolving society, talking about our dystopian futures, where there are 3 stories, one of which covers counterfeit HDMI cables, the other, crypto mining in the ventilation ducts of a courthouse, and finally, living for eternity on a $20 USB key. It's apparently that easy. Before that, this video is brought to you by Squarespace, and visiting squarespace.com/gamersnexus will give you 10% off your first purchase with them. We've built a number of our own websites with Squarespace, including our recently launched gamers.nexus site, where we list catastrophic PC hardware failures to inform subscribers of those failures. I built this site personally in a couple of hours by using Squarespace's Fluid engine to move blocks around visually until I liked it. We also built our store website with Squarespace using its built-in e-commerce tools, and of course we built a website for our CEO Snowflake because she demanded our audience know who really runs the show. Get to the core of your idea and spend less time on web design by signing up at squarespace.com/gamersnexus or click the link below. First up, some really quick features you should be aware about. We just made a post about our new mega charts page on gamersnexus.net, the website that we relaunched recently. So we're not going to recover the whole thing here. It's in a separate video. But on the features page on the GN site now, you can find what we're calling mega charts, going to our most up-to-date data set that's directly comparable within each given chart so that you can get the full set of numbers that we have, because we have to restrict them for videos just because there's a 16:9 vertical limitation in videos and it becomes illegible. The features page is going to get a UI rework in the near future. We'll talk about this more later, but we did want to share the mega charts pages here in case you missed that video. The key here is that anything on these charts, unless it's otherwise stated, is directly comparable. They'll be updated on a delay from reviews just because it adds some overhead, and we're a very lean team with just 4 full-timers aside from me, but we plan to update the mega charts a couple times a year with our latest information. This has been a huge request from the community for a long time now, and we're happy to fulfill it and get everything kind of in one place, easy to reference. It's also very helpful to us internally just for checking what the data set looks like at the moment without having to crawl through all of our spreadsheets that are getting very complicated and dense. But we've been ticking off requests one by one this year from the community, and the website's been a huge push in that direction. The biggest thing we're adding there is a singular acoustics page for CPU coolers, but you'll learn more about that soon. That's going to be awesome as we expand on it. Other quick patch notes for the site this past week. We published a mix of backdated and new articles. So we've got the best cases 2023 from Computex is up there. Noctua NHP1 cooler review from like 2021. We've moved that into article format because it's still a really popular cooler. Best CPUs, best GPUs from the past week. Both are articles now. We have the 14900K review there. We have a comparison methodology piece that talks about our processes for chart item selection, since that was a mega charts topic, percent scaling calculations, and patch or version control for software testing, so basically methodology notes. And we have a Steam Deck teardown now published in written format. And finally, as of today, the 10% sale on all the tools on store.gamersnexus.net will be ending in the immediate future as soon as I have time to go turn it off. So if you wanted to grab a GN project and solder mat to support these efforts, especially the mega charts, now is the time to do it. It's a great gift. If you or anyone you know likes doing projects, soldering, model building, repair work, it's a super durable item. And likewise, our 10-piece teardown toolkits are still on sale, as are the GN15 mod mats, and we just restocked some autographed ones. The medium mod mats are also on sale, and that'll be directly funding our mega charts effort, as it's posted ad-free along with everything else on the site, and it contains a lot of info. First up, a story on GPU scam prices. You may have seen that the RX 7900 XT and XTX cards in particular are sometimes available on Amazon for $400, $450, which is like half of the average price. Now, that alone should be a gigantic red flag because they're marked as new. So they're not even claimed to be used items. And actually, about 2 months ago, we started collecting some of these screenshots we'll show for that pricing on Amazon because we began an operation to try and get scammed by one of these whenever we saw them pop up. We were unsuccessful in getting scammed, but we did learn a little bit more about how it works. And it's not worth a full video, so it's just a small story here. Now, this came up because recently, Sapphire put out a tweet about the same topic. It's reminding customers to check for sold and shipped by Amazon labels on product pages. Same goes for Newegg, by the way. And we're regularly surprised by how many people email us claiming that a manufacturer has scammed them or that a retailer is overpriced, only to see that they're talking about a third-party seller on that retailer's marketplace. So the same applies here. We bought several of these suspiciously cheap cards. As expected, they never shipped, but maybe unfortunately for our ability to make a full video, Amazon also canceled the orders and refunded us basically within 24 hours of the purchases going through. So maybe they're starting to monitor this type of thing. Clearly, some people are getting scammed successfully by the sellers because Sapphire felt it necessary to put this tweet out to protect their own reputation and make sure people understand the difference between them or Amazon selling it and the scammers. But remember that you can use filtering features on retailers to isolate for first-party sales. And just a general reminder, especially as we go into end of year when people are expecting sales, if it looks too good to be true, like a 50% off 1-year-old video card that's brand new in box, probably it is, and just don't buy it. I mean, you can check if it says sold and shipped by Amazon or sold and shipped by Newegg or Sapphire or whatever. At that point, it's more likely to be real. But it is just generally good advice. If it looks too good to be true, it probably is. Speaking of the 7900 XTX, XP Review recently posted that the AMD high-end GPUs are selling through at a faster rate now, with thanks to the RTX 4090 bans in China. For some background on this, the US government's export controls are based on a rating defined within the rules as TPP, or Total Processing Performance. This is a score that looks something like this. This image is from the US Department of Commerce. On the left axis is total processing performance, with higher as better. The x-axis is density of performance, and these rules are different based on whether the chip is categorized as data center or not. Anything above a TPP of 4800 in data center requires special licensing and is default banned. We had trouble finding what NAC means since we're not commerce reporters, but it appears to stand for License Exception Notification Advanced Computing, which klgates.com defines as creating, quote, essentially a notification requirement for certain exports of certain less sophisticated ICs now controlled under 3A090. 3A090 is the regulation in question. Our best understanding of the TPP score is that it's calculated based on the operations per second performance without consideration of sparsity. A 4090 apparently is about a 5280 TPP score, eliminating it from shipment into China. But we already knew that part. The 7900 XTX and 7900 XT are, according to Tom's Hardware and its re-report of the XP Review story, ranked at 1955 and 1652 points. Tom's also provides some information on how it did that calculation. That means neither of these cards is considered powerful enough by the US government for export control. XP Review reported that the 7900 XTX and XT cards have increased in sales as a result of their more readily available nature, especially in China. We contacted a couple of board partners, and Gamers Nexus was able to confirm with a representative of an AMD video card board partner that its sales of the XTX and XT have recently picked up. The representative noted that the sales increase over the past month was alongside the 7900 XT price drops in the Western market, so that contributed to the sell-through rate as well, and it allowed them to clear out some inventory. Next one, related to this, is the NVIDIA RTX 4090D for Dragon, according to the rumors right now. So in relation to this last story, the RTX 4090 Dragon emerges. NVIDIA here apparently taking some notes from AMD's Golden Rabbit Edition, or GRE, version of its video cards. And this Dragon variant, if it comes to exist, would be for the Chinese market. So these cards will need to reduce that TPP score by the US government's calculation in order to be able to sell into China in basically a stripped down format, less performant variant. And rumors from mega-sized GPU simply state, quote, 4090D AD102-250. It's a very brief tweet. This would be a variation on the AD102 silicon that maximally features 144 SMs, but would be fused off or cut down to limit processing capabilities. Currently, the 4090 uses AD102-300 or 301. The original story was run by WCCF Tech, and they claimed the existence of the 4090D via their sources, with now additional leaks coming out supporting that. This time, there aren't any known specs for this card, so we'll stop here. There's no point in speculating on the specs yet. But It will definitely be easy to update the box art if all they have to do is append a letter. Maybe that's the magic to all of this. They're like, we'll do it in a way where we can sell you a sticker, and you put the sticker on the box, and that makes it sellable with the cut down variant. Now in game news, we previously reported on a massive Baldur's Gate 3 patch that had over 1,000 updates, performance fixes, bug and blocker fixes, and feature additions. And already Larian, the developer, is publishing another massive patch showing everyone once again how games are supposed to be done and how they used to be done. We're covering these because, one, it's a core part of our test suite right now. Two, it's an awesome game. And three, they're doing it right, and they should get credit for that. So the new patch 5 adds playable epilogues, which are supposed to factor in the permutations of all of your major decisions leading to the end of the game. The Steam patch note itself is funny, featuring such phrasing as dripkin and fresh threads. So that alone makes it worth a read. The patch also added honor mode, which Larian says increases game difficulty and tweaks boss fights. This is sort of like a hardcore mode, except you can choose to continue on death, but doing so will disable honor mode and disable awards for surviving it. Surviving honor mode gives a golden D20 to the player. There's also a new custom mode that allows relatively full customization of the way the game plays. Examples in the screenshot include enabling single save mode, changing enemy aggression, power levels, toggling death saving throws, and more. Larian also noted performance improvements resulting from the Xbox adaptation of Baldur's Gate 3. Further, Larian fixed a number of bugs in the game and added other features. The extended patch notes indicate dynamic resolution getting added for PS5, improvements in performance for low memory, and combat and balance changes, among others. And if you scroll through this, our biggest kudos goes to whoever is in charge of maintaining the patch notes, because it is beautifully done. Up next, Epic has been engaging in legal battles with Google and Apple for a couple of years now, and in its crusade against what it perceives to be high licensing fees and restrictive terms to sell games on these app stores, Epic's been battling for reduced costs and external payment methods primarily to be permitted. So this has gone in front of a judge again, and now U.S. District Judge James Donato, we'll go with, asked Epic and Google lawyers whether the two companies have attempted to settle. And both parties' lawyers said, no. Rather than trying to reach a private agreement, which may only benefit really the two parties directly by bringing this to a close, Epic has been pursuing more of a public form of justice through the court system, and potentially that would have wider reaching implications if it were to go through. Because let's just say for whatever reason, Google or Apple say, you know what, you were right the whole time, we'll settle, we'll let you do things the way you want, which seems very unlikely. But that wouldn't have any wider impact probably on the development community. So the judge has since ordered that Epic offer Google a settlement agreement and has demanded that Google respond to it by Monday, as in like immediately. Epic's lawyers stated that the ideal victory would include the distribution for all developers in an unrestricted sense on Android via the Google Play Store. They also want permission for external payment processing, which would bypass the Play Store. So in other words, if you collect money within the app, Google gets no part of that. And they also wanted an assurance that Google won't find a way to circumvent all of this in the future. That last point, the judge basically replied and said, we don't make judgments based on future, but for the other things, seek settlement for the first two demands and then come back. So we think it's unlikely that Google will settle in a way that benefits all developers, like it's kind of laid out here. If any settlement is reached, who knows? It may only be in the favor of these two parties. That seems the most realistic. But given Epic's recent heavy layoffs and ongoing costs bearing its profitability, it's tough to know whether they might kind of let the public pursuit of what they perceive as justice drop in favor of just being done with it. So, and also typically with settlements, you don't get the full details as part of the public. A lot of that is kept private. They put out a statement. They say it's been closed with a mutually beneficial conclusion for all parties or something, and that's the last we hear of it. Next one, ASUS is on a mission. It's determined to make the 4060 Ti, which is probably one of the worst value GPUs to launch in a while, an interesting purchase. We covered this card in the past, but now it's more fun. ASUS's China Bilibili channel posted a video in which it literally stacked a 4090 on top of a 4060 Ti dual and ran them both off one PCIe slot through an M.2 to PCIe adapter. To prove that it was working, ASUS showed the system running Cyberpunk 2077 at roughly 140 FPS, though we have no idea what specific subsettings and settings they were using, but it was working. And what's really going on here is that the same 4060 Ti ASUS previously showed off with the M.2 slot on the back is now connecting to a GPU for something different. The 4090 thing, it's just a fun demo. It displays how a user technically wouldn't be limited to native M.2 devices, and anything that can run off of PCIe by 4, for example, with the right adapter can theoretically function. Now, you would never do this, well, if you have a really specific use case, let us know, because that would be creative and we're curious. But generally speaking, you'd want the 4090 in the full 16 slot because you're going to be limited here at least a little bit. Depends how bandwidth constrained each app you're running is, but running a 4090 through another card as a pass-through like this, there's going to be a cost, and it will be a performance cost. But it's still interesting, and it did kind of open up our eyes to some other options. Like, you might have, say, a mini ITX box where maybe there's 3 slots in the case and your card only takes, say, 2 or something. The 2-slot cards, pretty rare today, but they still exist. And you could then run through the M.2 adapter some other card, like a capture card or a 10 gigabit NIC or whatever, and mount it to that 3rd slot. Not the most practical use, but just creatively thinking through how would you create a problem for this solution that ASUS has made. That's one of the ones we came up with. Anyway, if you missed the card the first time, this special 4060 Ti takes advantage of the fact that the GPU from NVIDIA only uses 8 PCIe lanes, and it splits 4 of the unused lanes off to an M.2 slot that's accessible on the back of the card. The M.2 device gets cooled by contact with the GPU's own heatsink and a small removable section of backplate on the bottom. Since the last time we covered this card, ASUS modified its PCB, and so the actual M.2 slot is now closer to the GPU die. It's therefore closer to the PCIe connection itself, and the video marks the trace routes on both versions of the PCB, illustrating the change pretty well. Speculating here, maybe this is necessary to maintain acceptable signal integrity or just for latency reasons or whatever, crosstalk reasons, but that was the change they made, and they showed it off, we think, well in that video. As a note, the motherboard has to support PCIe bifurcation for this to work. So to have both the GPU and the secondary device at the same time, you will need PCIe bifurcation. Also worth noting is that M.2 to PCIe slot risers can also be used in regular M.2 slots, of course, since that's what they're designed for. Honestly, we really just wanted to cover this because it's unique and cool and weird, and that's fun sometimes. It's a niche product idea, and piggybacking a second GPU that pushes through a primary GPU in this way, there's something there you could use it for, but it's silly in a way that's cool, and technologically it's interesting, and it's also just a fun way for ASUS to say, hey, NVIDIA, look, maybe put more lanes on the cards next time. That would be nice. But anyway, we're sure Case Modder will come up with something really interesting to make use of this concept. Next one, RTX 4090s are getting harvested, according to a new report by WCCF Tech, for parts for AI builds. Entire pallets worth of gaming market 4090s are being stripped of their coolers, having the GPU die and memory removed from the PCB, then transplanted onto new PCBs with 2-slot blower coolers. Now, almost certainly the new versions of these cards are significantly worse thermally, acoustically, maybe electrically from a power design standpoint, but the single advantage they have is that they'll better fit into server boxes. So that's both from a height standpoint, where a lot of the aftermarket or board partner custom PCBs for 4090s are running tall, and of course they also have massive 3-slot coolers. They tend to be axial, whereas going with a blower style setup in a cramped server box allows you to pack them in a lot closer, and moving to this might let them cut them down to, say, more traditional height and then slot thickness. Let's talk about the why, for why any of this might make sense. Disassembling these cards, putting them back together in what's definitely just, I mean, they're not as good. They're better for the use case that these vendors have for them, but they're stripping away expensive RGB LEDs and maybe 3-fan coolers, expensive components, expensive VRM and PCB designs, stripping those away and making them something else. So financially, it's a big investment, and part of the reasoning we think for this is you look at the RTX 4090s right now, well, in the West, they're like basically not available. But in China, they have or will soon become legally unavailable, and that is through the sanctions we've been covering the last couple of weeks now. So this follows export bans on the most high-end NVIDIA data center accelerators for AI and other tasks. And there's also a ban on shipping more 4090s, and at this point, NVIDIA has actually removed mentions of the 4090 from at least a couple of its Chinese language versions of its website. We've covered that story previously, so you can check back to our previous news video for that if you haven't seen it. WCCF Tech gathered the information and photos from Baidu forums, where you can see users posting photos of 4090s in various stages of disassembly. They show the newly assembled PCBs, testing of the resulting cards afterwards. Most of the cards being worked on at this facility are from Palette, a palette of palettes, but models from ASUS, Colorful, and PNY are also shown. With prices skyrocketing to $2,000 plus now, at least in the market we observe in the US, it's possible that these types of operations are buying cards off of gaming users as well as the usual wholesale or retail channels they may have access to. Now, an unfortunate downside to this whole process is the massive mountain of e-waste it's going to produce, because when you build a cooler for something like a 4090, it's so customized that it really doesn't have much other use case than going back on that specific PCB. So can't really do much with that unless they were to, at some point, get more 4090 GPUs and BGA solder them onto the old board and stick the cooler back on it. But that seems like a whole lot of steps to jump through and unlikely. So you end up with boards that are expensive, where the GPU is being extracted from them and put on a smaller board, and coolers. And what do you do with any of these parts? Maybe desolder stuff and like sell it piecemeal or something, but most likely a lot of this is going to end up as waste. Anyway, the most likely reasoning for any of this is so the companies that are driving this can cram more 4090s into more machines and do whatever tasks those companies are trying to do with them, whether that's machine learning processes or AI or whatever it may be. So anyway, it's a crazy story. For the final entry in this episode, we got something fun. It's not lighthearted, but it is fun. Mostly because the more you pay attention to what's happening technologically and within society, the more you realize that truly there is no more fiction. It's all reality. First, a counterfeit HDMI cable operation was busted in Gaglione, Taiwan. Police found $80 million of Taiwan dollars worth of cables, or 2.6 million in USD, and they say these are counterfeits. As for what makes a counterfeit HDMI cable, well, it's apparently that they didn't pay to license the name HDMI. HDMI must be licensed from the HDMI Association, and the police department's statement effectively translates to them saying that sellers often don't understand that the products must be licensed, so they busted them and seized all their assets. The concern was that unlicensed HDMI cables don't pass any particular certifications, and there was some mention of potentially posing a risk to consumers for quality or safety. The report indicates that manufacturers have to be registered through the HDMI Association to be in compliance with the trademark. Next, last month, a Polish courthouse identified a crypto mining operation that was stealing power from a government building. The electricity thieves were contractors for a third-party IT company that worked for the government courthouse, and the Polish government released a statement noting that they had been stealing hundreds to thousands of US dollars worth of electricity per month. The mining machines, apparently, were hidden in the ductwork of the government building, which is definitely a new speedrun strat to getting criminally charged. How do we get charged the fastest? What if we do the crime in a government building? We could just be judged right then and there when they find it in the CS nuke vents or whatever. Up next, we saw a press release posted for a digital clone scam that markets eternal life. It says that your answer to about 20 to 25 questions, a couple of selfies that you upload, and a USB key will preserve your existence for eternity. The press release stated this, quote, With so much uncertainty in the world, we believe it's important for us, as people, to start collecting information about ourselves as soon as possible. Only then can we ensure that when the time comes, we don't vanish, but instead leave our lasting presence behind. From grandparents to creatives, okay? Everyone has something to share with future generations, and we make it possible to do so forever. Now, as we all know, grandparents and creatives are completely mutually exclusive. One cannot be the other. So this is a necessary technology. We'd wager that this was originally supposed to be an NFT of some kind, and then maybe it was supposed to be part of the metaverse. But when those rugs started getting pulled, they just defaulted to the classic longest running con of all time, selling eternal life. Why not put a modern spin on it? It's been a good enough gig for thousands of years. So include a USB key, sell it for $20, say something about GDPR, and you're good to go. And that is, by the way, what it costs. It's $20 to tune your, what they call, clone. And if you're worried about data collection, don't worry about uploading selfies and answering 20 to 25 questions that may or may not include security prompts. We're not sure, because front and center, the press release tells you they're GDPR compliant. And if that doesn't make you concerned, then we're not sure what will. But please don't buy it. It seems like the type of thing that's like you plug it into a computer and then it installs a keylogger. But it's just our opinions. That's it for this one. Hopefully we don't have enough dystopian news for this to happen every week, but it's kind of fun if we do. At least we can laugh at the demise of technology and society colliding. All right, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to grab an item and support us directly, or gamersnexus.net to check out the new mega charts. We're going to be adding more and more of those over time. It's going to take us a bit to fill them all in, but it's been really fun working on, and we'll see you all next time.